Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Tonight we're out in the shop working on the flatbed again, and as you can see, it's in pieces. So yeah, I decided to go in and pull it in the shop. We got an ice storm coming in, and I won't be driving it, so I decided to pull it in and start taking it apart. See if I can figure out what's been going on with this driver's side door, because ever since I've owned it, this door has been loose on the hinges. I figured the hinges were bad, or the bushings in the hinges need to be replaced, something like that. And I did go pick up my new door, which I've already taken apart. Got all the got the wiring harness that the salvage yard decided to cut for me. Got it pulled out, but there's no rust in this door. Everything's straight on it and solid. I do need to re-weld this little brace that's down in here that comes in here, so I need to pull those together and weld that back together. And I think I'll be doing a little rust treating on the inside of that door and painting the inside of the door just to prevent it from rusting out in the future. Now I will probably do that with the new passenger side door as well, just to prevent any corrosion in the future. But anyways, so I tore this on apart, and I'm not sure if you can see in here or not, but I had a little surface rust back in here, and this area of this sheet metal had bulged out a bit. So I straightened it back up, and this area down here was fine. But the reason being is this is the plate that secures inside back behind this sheet metal that the hinge actually bolts to, and it is shot. One of the bolts had been broken off for who knows how long, and the other two just weren't up to the task of holding the weight of the door. And over the years, this thing has pretty well fallen apart. So, literally, just a little tab of sheet metal was all that was left holding the driver's side door to the truck. So, I'm going to go on and order new hinges for this side. And I'm going to make some 1/4-inch plates to replace those. And I'll drill and tap them instead of relying on these riv nuts. And either that or I'll weld a nut on the back side of the plate, something a little bit more solid. I'll probably do that with the passenger side too, to prevent any issues down the road. But yeah, that's pretty well where we're at. I'm also working on some electrical stuff while it's in here and in pieces. While I'm waiting on parts, I'm adding a pair of these. They're waterproof 6-circuit fuse blocks. I'm going to hook one up to battery power, so it's hot all the time. It'll be fused, of course. And I'm going to be hooking one up to a 90 amp continuous duty rated Cole-Hurst solenoid that will be triggered by the ignition. So I'll have a dedicated new ignition fuse block and a dedicated battery hot fuse block. I also picked up a waterproof relay box that is fused as well. This holds 6 standard Bosch relays, and it's got 6 fuses for each circuit. So all of my relayed stuff will be ran through this box. I'm going to mount this box under the hood. I'm going to go on and do the headlight relay upgrade. So I'll have relays for the high beams and low beams instead of relying on the switch. And I'm also going to probably relay the seat heaters that I've got. I'm not sure on that yet. I may end up just running those through fused power through those fuse blocks I've got. I don't think they need relays on them. Kind of a waste because they don't draw much current. So I'll probably end up hacking up these harnesses for the switches and the connectors, and then building them how I want them done. I also got in the rest of the switches for my overhead console, so I get to wire them in. I went with setup like this. This is out of a F350. I wanted something, a triple gauge setup, and I didn't want to go with the traditional pillar pods like everybody else does. I just wanted something a little different. And I wanted room for switches, and that would be out of the way but easy to get to. So I'm running 6 Contura V switches from over the river and through the woods. It's a great resource for anything 12-volt stuff. I got 2 switches to choose between: the camera that I'm going to mount up on the headache rack and the one that's going to go above the hitch. Power feed for the cab heater and the mirror defroster. And hopefully, once I get all this stuff hooked up and straightened out, I'll actually have power seats working and seat heaters working and get all these little odds and ends buttoned up. I mean, everything's been in the truck for a couple of years, and it's just one of those things that I've put off, and well, now I've got time to do it, so might as well get it done. So here's how I made the reinforcement plates for the door hinges, or where the door hinges bolt to. I had some time at work, so I went on and just threw them together there. It's pretty simple, 1/4-inch plate. Just made a template, cut them out, welded a few nuts on the backside, and they worked out pretty well. So here we go. Well, back out in the shop again tonight, working on the flatbed, and I managed to get the new door plates put in. Let's see if I get some light on this situation here. These were a bit of a pain to get fit up in this pillar, because there is no room to work. This one went in pretty smooth, but the upper one has to go in there. There's a little opening in there, which there's a couple wiring harnesses and everything else that run down through this pillar right behind this, which makes it really fun to get things in there. But they're in, and that's done. So I'm waiting on the hinges to show up. They're supposed to be here Friday, but I'm not sure if you can hear it on the video or not. But we had a nice storm roll through, and now we're looking at another 4 to 6 inches of snow. So I'm not sure if my parts will show up or not. So they're kind of in limbo right now. But hopefully my hinges show up tomorrow, and then I'll be able to get that new door mounted and start wiring that in. So for tonight, I think I'm going to work on all the wiring goodies back here. I've got all my switches to wire up. Got a couple fuse boxes to wire up. So might as well not waste any time. I've already got one of the fuse boxes mounted. I've got it mounted up here on the firewall, and the clutch pedal just clears it. So I think that'll work pretty well. It's up out of the way, and it'll be easy to access when I need to work on something. But I need to find a spot for the other one. So I think what I'm gonna do is ditch this vacuum can and clean up this rat's nest here. This stuff needs to be pulled out anyways because it's not hooked up. And maybe make a little mount plate for the fuses and the fuse box. I may use that fuse box for a battery hot source, but I'm not sure. We'll figure that out here in just a little bit. Well, I changed my mind on the location of that second fuse panel, and I found another spot under the dash that'll be tucked up out of the way. I think that will work a little bit better than being under the hood. So that one there is going to be battery hot, and this one down here is going to be ignition hot. So now to get them wired up, I'm going to go on and make up the power cable for the first fuse block. We've got some 5/16 number 8 copper terminals or lugs. I'll slip it on there, which I'll be feeding both of those fuse blocks with number 8 power wire. It's going to be fused at 80 amps. Those blocks will never see that kind of power, but it's probably overkill, but we're going to do it that way anyways. I'd rather do it overkill than not. Let's see if I can show you guys how I do these. So I like to crimp the ends like so. Good mechanical crimp, and then sleeve the whole lug up to the eyelet, or real close to the eyelet, with heat shrink tube. I've not used this tube before, so I'm not sure how much it'll shrink down, but we'll see. I should probably grab my torch, but it's not handy right this second, so a lighter it is. And there we have it. Okay. I've got power fed in to what is going to be our ignition hot accessory block. And I went on, and it's kind of hard to tell in the video here, but I double nutted the power stud just to make sure it doesn't loosen up over time. And that whole block gets a protective cover put on it, so that should work out really well. Now, I've got to do the same thing for what will be our battery hot fuse block. And now we've got power ran to our battery hot block. Now, it's not hooked up on the other end yet, and I'm going to come through and I'm going to wire loom all of this and tuck it up out of the way real nice and secure it all in place. I don't have to worry about it getting chafed on anything. But yeah, fuse blocks are in. Now, all that we need to do is set up this end of it. I've got 80 amp fuses for both of these feed lines, and this is going to be the feed for our ignition hot block. So yeah, got a little bit more to go, but it's dinner time, so I'm going to call it a night. Well, another night out in the shop working on the flatbed. Of course, the weather has postponed parts being delivered, so I believe I'm going to break this up into 2 videos because it's probably going to be middle of next week before I get the parts. So I'd like to get this out anyways. So tonight we're going to button up some of the electrical stuff and see how far we get with that. I've cleared out most of what was down in this corner. I still have some wiring to clean up a little bit, some of the nonsense the previous owner had done. And I've got our solenoid mounted, and I'm going to be mounting this. This here is just a 150 amp circuit breaker that I've got feeding a White Rogers relay back there. That's a 500 amp solenoid back there, and that is a that's for manual glow plug control. So I'm going to mount that straight down next to this solenoid permanently and clean that up, make it look a little cleaner anyways. And then all I have left to do is run power or mount the fuse for the battery hot fuse block in the cab and cut the wiring to length and such. As you can see, I've already got 1 fuse for the solenoid. And like I said, that's an 80 amp fuse. That's a 100 amp solenoid. The fuse block's rated for 100 amp as well. So I figured I'd rate everything for 100 amp and then fuse it at 80. And that way I know I got plenty of leeway on the wiring and such. And that way I should never have any trouble out of it. Anyways, let's button up this wiring and get it done. Okay, got the power supply wires ran for both fuse blocks. Got the solenoid hooked up for the accessory fuse block, or for the ignition hot fuse block, but I have not ran the ignition triggers to the solenoid yet. So beyond that, it fits in here fairly nice and is out of the way. As you can see, I've got both fuses mounted down here on a little tray. Got the solenoid mounted here, and both wires feed in through the firewall. And all I got left to do under here, I'm going to mount this circuit breaker right here and clean this up a little bit more, and then run my trigger wires for the solenoid. And then I will have a battery hot fuse block and an ignition hot fuse block that I can wire all of my oddball accessories to and not rely on the factory wiring in this truck. So anyways, dinner's pretty well waiting on me, so I am going to call it a night again, and I think I'm going to call it here with this video. Part 2 is going to include buttoning up the wiring inside the truck, installing the rest of my little switches, and hopefully getting the driver's side door on, which all of that will happen next week when the parts show up. So anyways, obviously we got quite a bit more coming, so if you would just be sure to follow along. I appreciate you guys watching. Please subscribe.